weeks of Deadpool and Wolverine, it's time to finally give you my thoughts on it. Let's freaking go! Welcome to Cinema, where we focus on film. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought of Deadpool and Wolverine. Was it good, was it bad, or somewhere right in the middle? And be respectful of everyone's opinions, that we can all share our commonality for loving film as a whole. And make sure to like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe if you wish. If you want to join in the film culture community where we talk about the love of cinema as a whole. But going right into the synopsis. After a period of time putting his Deadpool life behind him, Wade Wilson must suit up once again as Deadpool once there's an existential crisis to his world and team up with an even more reluctant Wolverine. And going into the positive, there's explosive action fun that's really great to be had. It has some excellent cameos throughout, some nods and a love letter to the Fox universe, sort of closing out the Fox movies of what we know from the X-Men movies in the past as a whole, as well as a few nods to other movies that I can't really suggest or spoil anything that I just still love about this movie, what it has to offer. The action is great, the cinematography is really good for what they're doing out of different camera movements that flow into different angles. The fights are well shot, and what you get out of the service for this film is certainly a fan service type of deal of where we're going with it, and that's certainly not a bad feel when you're getting Deadpool and Wolverine in a close to comic accurate form and getting Hugh Jackman back as the Wolverine and Ryan Reynolds, of course, as Deadpool. It's a R-rated film that even in the MCU, even collected by Disney, has the crass language, the crude humor that really speaks to the level of what we're getting out of Deadpool, and something different, a little bit different, out of Wolverine. We got Logan before for Wolverine, but this is still its own character. It sort of respects the nod of what we've seen in the past Logan, and then having this Wolverine be someone different, a different variant, and just what we get out of all of the other characters along the way. Casanova and her as a villain, what we get that, and how you develop that character is interesting enough for what we're providing for the film, for the threat, and certain time variants, certain things involved with the TVA that I won't spoil, but just the involvement of everything. The story flows rather nicely for what we're expecting out of just all the scenery that is provided throughout. And going into mixed elements, some things you may need to look out for. It won't work for everyone, and some of the things didn't work as effectively for me. Some things about the humor, it's crude and crass, which I'm not always into that sort of language. So knowing that is the Deadpool character, I respect what they're doing for the choices provided. I still got a kick out of some things that are going about along the way. And then there's some characters or certain cameos, what they do with the fan service, sometimes it can be a little bit on the nose and not always as deserving as it feels like it needs to be there. And it doesn't provide too much service to the story that is centrally placed, rather than just being something to service the fans, which, like I said, it's a mixed element where, yes, it's a fun thing when you're looking at it as fan service, providing something extra fun, extra details that give nods to other things, and breaking the fourth wall. That's part of Deadpool's ego of what you're getting out of his character. And there are certain moments where that just doesn't always work as effectively for the humor that's provided, or it breaks a certain moment that, yes, that's what fourth wall breaking is, but it just doesn't always flow naturally with certain ideas where some of the jokes are always trying to top the next or go about along the way with things that don't always work as effectively for the film as a whole, which leads me right into negatives, where this film just didn't work as effectively as a whole for the nature of how it uses its language, how it utilizes its humor, and balancing that with the villain, balancing that with the drama side of the story. It just isn't as powerful, isn't as effective to where, yes, you're getting all of these grand scenes over here, But over here, you're getting this story development that is a little muddled just by the creative juices of trying to bring in some cameos, trying to make fun of the own MCU as a whole. And while you're getting some great cameos, they don't always have character provided within them. Even if you're getting something that was developed before within a character, you still have to have the film that provides a character and details out their story. And even if they're a side character, which most of them are, it's supposed to still provide enough that makes you have the intrigue for understanding why that character matters and having their life at stake, as well as Deadpool and Wolverine, which I can look at their characters and see their arcs and connect it to a certain movie that I've seen before in the MCU or in general. That isn't wrong to be utilizing that story trope or character idea before, how they're using their arcs. But personally, the way they develop it is just not as satisfying to what you get out of Deadpool, what is going about from point A to point B, as well as Wolverine. He has his own arc that works a little more effectively than Deadpool, but when Deadpool is a little bit more the focus of the movie because it's essentially Deadpool 3, what you're getting out of that just becomes less satisfying because he has most of the lines, most of the scene-stealing shots that can be good for the nature of the Deadpool-loving character, but ultimately can be a little muddled by the nature of what all this film asks for because of all the different story narratives that are going on at once and certain ideas that just don't feel as fully developed as I would like to be, as I would really be expecting for something that really hones in on Deadpool, hones in on Wolverine. And while you're getting all of these grand fights, there's some lackluster moments that you get out of the characters, and getting this villain, she's a little weak, a little underdeveloped for what you're getting, and that isn't totally a bad thing because you're not always gonna get these grand villains, but ultimately it sort of feels like distracting because there's a couple different moments where you're getting these other threats and they don't feel like they coincide well with the flow of the story and the nature of how it balances in with the humor, which, speaking on that, most of the humor, yes, it's going to be subjective to everyone. It hones in on humor that just does not always work for me. It drowns out some of the drama, the emotional moments that should hit home, hit harder than I would have expected. And so ultimately, it loses some energy, loses its juices, where while there can be those great moments that everyone has been loving, that I love as well, ultimately, this film suffers from a stroke that loses a moment from time to time and becomes a big mixed bag as a whole, and therefore I have to rate Deadpool and Wolverine a 5 out of 10. Let me know down in the comments below what you think of Deadpool and Wolverine. Was it good? Was it bad? Or somewhere in between? Do you agree with my points? Do you get insight? Or are you just a huge fan as a whole? Make sure to like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe if you're already to join the film culture community where we talk about the love of cinema as a whole. And make sure to do yourself a favor and go watch a movie.